Hello and welcome to another Magic Duels gameplay. Today we're taking a look at a blue, red and green or Temur colored midrange deck featuring the energy mechanic from Kaladesh. And there's lots of ways you can build energy decks. You could go all in on the Electrostatic Pummeler plus pump spells plan, but since we only do get 2 copies in Magic Duels of the Electrostatic Pummeler, I don't think that's a great idea. So instead we're going for a more mid-range version of the energy deck with a lot of the good mid-range energy creatures as well as some removal spells. So let's take a look at the entire deck. Starting out with Galvanic Bombardment as a nice cheap removal spell that gets better the more copies we've already cast. Blossoming Defense can be used as a pump spell, but can also be used to protect our creatures from spot removal spells, and not a lot of people will play around the +2/+2 effect, so you can get good value for just a single mana. We also have Sylvan Advocate as just a great 2-drop. Gets a lot better in the late game once you have 6 lands, as he gets +2/+2, and also goes with our creature lands. Then we have Longtusk Cub, which is a creature you want to see on turn 2, since if you can start connecting with the Longtusk Cub, you start accumulating a lot of energy that you can spend to make the cub larger, but you can also spend that energy somewhere else if you want to. Voltaic Brawler is another great 2-drop, since he comes into play with 2 energy, and you can spend an energy to give him +1/+1 and trample until end of turn once he attacks. We also have Harness Lightning, which is a great removal spell, and especially in an energy deck, there's lots of ways you can use the Harness Lightning, since you can also use energy you already have to maybe take out a larger creature, and if you're targeting a smaller creature, you will have some energy left over that you can use somewhere else. We also have Tireless Tracker, which is a great creature in any green midrange deck, as she can provide lots of card advantage with the clues she provides, and we also have the Evolving Wilds to provide 2 triggers. Reclamation Sage helps us fight all the vehicle decks, and we can also search her up with our Woodland Bellower, which we will get to in a second. We have Whirler Virtuoso, which is a nice energy outlet, since we can spend 3 energy to create a Thopter token, and he also comes into play with 3 energy, so we can make a Thopter token right away if we want to, so that's 3 power and 4 toughness just by himself, but of course you can also use that energy somewhere else, or use energy you already accumulated to make more Thopters, so just a great card in this deck. We also have Imperial Voyager, which is a second reason to play blue in an energy deck, since it's a flying trample creature that also generates energy when he deals damage to a player. Also works nicely with pump spells and +1/+1 counters, since then you start gaining even more energy, and so just a great way to start accumulating some energy that you can then spend somewhere else. We also have Bristling Hydra, which is another great energy creature, comes into play with 3 energy, and then we can pay 3 energy to give the Hydra hexproof until end of turn and give him a +1/+1 counter, so very difficult for most decks to deal with the Hydra, and then of course it's also just a big creature that can start attacking and dealing lots of damage. And important to note here that if you don't have any energy when you play the Hydra, and the opponent does have spot removal available, they can still kill your Hydra before you will get the 3 energy to give the Hydra hexproof, so that's something you have to keep in mind. We also have Chandra, Torch of Defiance as a nice removal spell that can also provide some card advantage. Then we also have Verdurous Gearhulk, which goes nicely in a creature deck like this one, and especially if we can put the +1/+1 counters on something like a Voyager, then he starts making even more energy, and can also put the counters on the Hydra, which is a safe place to store all your extra power and toughness, since it's going to be a hard creature for the opponent to kill. We also have a copy of Multiform Wonder, which is another way to spend energy nicely. Comes into play with 3 energy, and we can use an energy to give him either Vigilance, Flying, Lifelink until end of turn, and we can also spend an energy to change his power and toughness around. We also have Skysovereign Consul Flagship, which is a great way to deal with opposing creature decks, but can also deal damage to planeswalkers. So once this resolves, it's going to be difficult for the opponent to keep any planeswalkers in play. And since we are a creature deck, it's going to be pretty trivial to crew the Skysovereign. We also have Confiscation Coup, which is another great reason to add blue to an energy deck, since this can just steal an opponent's creature or artifact, and of course gives us 4 energy, so if we want to take a larger creature, we need to add some more energy, but that's not going to be a big problem in this deck. And if we're stealing a smaller creature or artifact, we'll have some energy left over. And then finally we have Woodland Bellower, which can search up one of the many green 3-drops in the deck, or even a 2-drop if we want to get something like a Sylvan Advocate. And of course Reclamation Sage is a nice target to have access to against any enchantments or artifacts. Then our mana base, 2 islands, 2 mountains, 4 forests, since that's our main color, 2 Lumbering Falls, which go nicely with the Sylvan Advocate, 2 Cinder Glade, 2 Rootbound Crag, 2 Hinterland Harbor, 2 Sulfur Falls, then 3 Aether Hub, which is also great in any energy deck, and then 4 Evolving Wilds, which also go with the Tireless Tracker. Alright, so that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which is an easy mulligan. And this is another easy mulligan, unfortunately. Alright, this hand's not great, but we are on a draw, so I think we can probably keep this one, and hopefully we find a green land soon here. Alright, a Longtusk Cub. Well, I'm really hoping for that green land now, since if we can play out Cub or Brawler next turn, then we're in a decent spot. And we also just need a 3rd land to start casting our other creatures here. Opponent with a take inventory, so it could be some sort of tutelage deck. And alright, I guess I'll take it. Evolving Wilds, a turn late, but at least we'll find us some green mana. So next turn we can pretty much choose which one of our creatures we want to deploy. Unfortunate that we didn't get to play out any of our 2-drops on turn 2, but at least it's better than not being able to cast anything. Opponent with Fevered Visions, so that's definitely looking like either a blue-red burn deck or a tutelage deck. So we basically want to deploy our hand as quickly as possible, which with only 3 lands might be problematic, so I'm actually not too sad if we draw a bunch of lands here. We probably want to be as mana efficient as possible here, and that means either playing the Voyager or the Virtuoso. So I think we go with the Voyager here, since that either means our opponent has to spend a lot of mana dealing with the Voyager to take care of it, and otherwise we can start generating some extra energy that we can definitely use with the cards in hand. And if our opponent has something like a Galvanic Bombardment, that will not answer the Voyager right away. So our opponent does have the tutelage, so it's basically a race here. We need to try and kill our opponent before they mill us out. And there go 2 lands I wouldn't have minded drawing. Alright. Aether Hub is a nice addition, so we can play 2 2-drops here if we want to. And I think we do. We can play the Cub and the Brawler. So we do need to spend 1 energy to add green with Aether Hub. But we are going to gain 2 energy from the Voyager and 2 from the Brawler. So that gives us access to 4 energy. So we can potentially make the Cub a 4/4. So unless the opponent has something like a Lightning Axe, they probably won't be able to deal with the Cub. So yeah, I don't hate that. Our other option would be Tireless Tracker plus land, but I don't think we need to draw more cards here. And Virtuoso doesn't seem as good as deploying 2 2-drops. So let's go for it. Attack for 2. and then play some creatures. And blue-red usually doesn't have a lot of sweepers, at least not that deal 3 or more damage, since Radiant Flames needs Converge 3 to deal 3 damage, and Kozilek's Return is only 2 damage. So those cards would not be a big problem for us. And we are presenting a pretty fast clock here. Alright, opponent does have the Kozilek's Return, but we can respond by pumping up the Longtusk Cub. So we only lose our Brawler here, which is not the end of the world. And their opponent is stuck on only 1 red mana, so that limits the amount of removal spells they can play. So we did mill a Bombardment, which is important since we have 2 in hand. Probably start by attacking, since their opponent can't interact here with only colorless mana. And I think we pump the Cub right away, since I think we want to deal as much damage as possible, and I don't think our opponent is going to have great ways to answer the Cub. So putting all our eggs in the Longtusk Cub basket doesn't seem like a big risk against this deck. So let's hit for 6, gain 2 energy, and then 2 from the Cub as well. And then I think we go Tracker plus land and then play Voltaic Brawler. Could also keep up 2 mana to potentially sacrifice a clue and pump the Tireless Tracker, but I think I feel pretty safe playing out the Brawler here, since our opponent pretty much needs a Radiant Flames for 2 again, but that still doesn't answer 2 of our creatures. So yeah, I think this is fine. We could have potentially played the Brawler pre-combat to pump the Cub once more, but keeping some energy around to potentially spend with the Virtuoso is also not bad, since there are some ways our opponent could interact with the Cub, especially in blue. Alright, Thing in the Ice is certainly gonna die to the bombardments, and I doubt our opponent will transform it right away. So the tutelage keeps milling. Alright, that's the second bombardment, so now 1 bombardment deals 4 damage. Then we can also either play the Wilds to get 2 clues, or just the Lumbering Falls to add another potential creature to the board. We can't, unfortunately, both play Bombardment, Virtuoso and sacrifice a clue, but we can Bombardment and play Virtuoso, which I think is the better line here. Although we would kind of get owned if our opponent goes Mountain, plays Chandra and -4s. So maybe saving the Virtuoso is not a bad idea. So yeah, we can sacrifice 2 clues, so I think still playing the Lumbering Falls here is fine, since that still gives us access to 2 clues, and I think we sacrifice them first, since that might change our play here. Alright, Sylvan Advocate is not a bad one. We have access to 6 lands, so maybe playing the Advocate is fine here since it survives a Chandra -4. And yeah, we can still bombardment the Thing in the Ice. See what happens. Alright, that works. So here I think we attack with everyone, spend an energy to pump the Brawler, and the question is if we want to pump the Cub. I don't think so, since we're dealing lethal here if our opponent doesn't have any interaction. We can just wait for our opponent to do anything and then potentially respond by pumping the Cub or sacrificing the clue. So our opponent's going for the Lightning Axe, which deals 5 damage. And they're pointing it at the Brawler. They still have blue and colorless up, So if we sack the clue, this is 5, plus 6 is 11, plus pump the cub is lethal, so I think we just go for lethal here. That works. Pump once more, that works. Does the opponent... Alright, they have the disperse. So bounces the cub. Now the question is, do we want to sack the clue to deal 7 damage, or do we just want to replay the Longtusk Cub? I think we want to replay a creature this turn. So we'll just deal 6. Gain 2 energy from the Voyager. And then I think we play the Advocate, since that can still survive a potential Chandra and would also make our Lumbering Falls more threatening. Alright. Let's see. Alright, looks like our opponent did not have the necessary answers. Pour over the pages can certainly mill us for a whole bunch, since they get 3 triggers from the tutelage. Still have our Reclamation Sage in the deck, which would be pretty relevant against tutelage. But here we're probably able to close out the game. And I think the safest way to do that is by first playing the Evolving Wilds just to get some more clues. But I think we're just activating the Lumbering Falls here. And we would probably get a mountain. Activate Lumbering Falls. Move to combats. And attack with everyone. Alright, sweet. On to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which is an easy mulligan with 6 lands. And yeah, this looks pretty good. So definitely keeping. Question here is what land we want to play on turn 1. It's either the Cinder Glade or the Evolving Wilds. So turn 2 we can play the Cub just by playing the Aether Hub. So I think we start with, let's see, if we play the Cinder Glade we don't have to pay any energy to play the Cub on turn 2 if we go Aether Hub. But the upside of playing the Evolving Wilds first is that if we find a basic in the coming few draw steps, then the Cinder Glade might come into play untapped. But we also did pick up a tracker, so maybe keeping the wilds has its benefits. So I think I'll go with the tapped Cinder Glade here, and then we can just play a Cub turn 2 and still have that energy left over from the Aether Hub. And go from there, and worst case scenario we can just play the Brawler turn 3 together with the Evolving Wilds, as our opponent plays Smuggler's Copter. Soon to be banned in Standard, but still going to be legal in Magic Duels. Alright, so we picked up a mountain. So I think that means we want to play the mountain instead of the Aether Hub here, since that potentially allows us to play the Brawler next turn without having to spend any energy, if we do want to play the Wilds next turn instead of the Aether Hub for some reason. So if the opponent wants to crew the Copter, they probably won't be able to kill the Cub. Instead they have Olivia's Bloodsworn, which is going to crew the Copter. So opponent might be on a red-black vampire deck. But our Cub connecting is good news. We also have an answer for the Bloodsworn in Galvanic Bombardment. Alright, that's some nice synergy. Opponent can get this back from the graveyard at some point. Alright, Hydra is not bad against a red-black deck with lots of spot removal. So here I think we want to play the Bombardment to take out the Bloodsworn, slow down our opponent a little bit, and then we can play the Brawler, attack with the Cub. And I don't think we pumped the Cub yet with the energy from the Brawler, since our opponent might have ways to kill the Cub right away. And then next turn we can go Tireless Tracker plus Evolving Wilds. Alright, I don't hate that. So let's Bombardment the Bloodsworn. Attack for 2. And then play the Brawler. So we can potentially pump the Cub twice. If our opponent would want to deal 3 damage to our Cub, we can still save it. But if they have something like an unlicensed disintegration, I don't want to be spending all our energy on the Cub. Alright, Insolent Neonate. Can crew the Copter here. Can also be used to enable Madness cards. So our opponent might also have a Madness card they want to play through the Copter discard. It's going to be a Fiery Temper, but if they target the Cub we can still save it, so they might want to target the Brawler instead. Yep, so 3 damage. Can't really prevent that. And we drop to 14. Alright, Skysovereign is certainly a good card if we can get to it, and Bristling Hydra as well. So here I think we want to get another forest with the Evolving Wilds, could also get an island for the Voyager, but we still have the Aether Hub, which can potentially make blue mana. Although it's probably better to get an island since we also have some double blue cards in the deck. So yeah, let's attack, and I think at this point I don't mind pumping the Cub twice. Opponents can't Madness anything out at instant speed here. That would mess with the Cub. And now it's out of range of future Fiery Tempers, and we get in for the most damage. And now we get to go Tracker, Evolving Wilds, get some card advantage going as well. And now we have 2 creatures that the opponent basically has to deal with. And let's fetch right away, so our opponent can't kill the Tracker in response. Alright, so in a decent position, but that could change quickly. Next turn we can potentially play the Hydra, which is a pretty good creature to have access to here. Neonate is gonna get sacrificed to Madness out a creature. Alright, so our opponent with Incorrigible Youths for 3 haste. And I think we block here, unless our opponent has another Fiery Temper, which they could very well have here. Alright, so they're gonna take out our Tracker. So we don't have the option to block, and we're gonna take 7 down to 7. Alright, land is nice. So here we have the option of going Skysovereign, kill the Youths. Can also just play the Hydra, and that way we can potentially just block the Youths, although we would need to spend a lot of energy to survive the trade, which doesn't seem likely. So I think it's probably better to play Skysovereign here, play it safe since we are at 7, And then the question is, do we want to attack with the Cub or keep it back to crew the Skysovereign to potentially block the Copter? Which is an other question. If we attack and use the energy, we would hit for 5. And then next turn, potentially even more. So I think attacking is probably fine. There are some ways we can lose, of course. But I think we want to be proactive here. Even though we do have the potential late game covered with the clues, I still feel like attacking here is probably better. And let's spend the energy right away. And if our opponent deals with the Cub, we still have more creatures that can crew the Skysovereign. Alright. So hopefully our opponent doesn't go creature, crew, copter, and has unlicensed disintegration for the Cub. Alright, elusive Tormentor can be transformed into Insidious Mist. Alright, so we can crew the Skysovereign here, attack with it, then our opponent can potentially crew the Copter to chump with it, which is not ideal. And then next turn they can attack us back with the Tormentor if they want to. They can also block with the Tormentor and transform it. I feel like if we play the Hydra to crew the Skysovereign and then attack with Skysovereign and Cub, our opponent is probably going to have to make some blocks and discard a card to keep the Tormentor alive. And then hopefully we're not dead next turn to an unblockable Tormentor, plus maybe a burn spell, but I mean we can't really stop that even if we have some blockers back. So yeah, I think we just play out the Hydra. Crew Skysovereign. And attack. Our opponent needs to at least block one of our creatures, otherwise they're dead. And then hopefully we're not dead on the way back. And here we couldn't deal the damage to the Copter since it wasn't crewed yet. So looks like the Copter is chum blocking here. Opponent also gets another draw and discard out of the Copter. So hopefully it's not a Fiery Temper targeted at us. No, instead it is a creature. But our opponent can't pay for the Madness cost here, so they can't put it into play. Opponent drops to 4. But if they do have any instant speed creature or burn spell, we're still dead here. Could have played around a potential instant speed creature, but not around burn spell. So opponent is attacking. So this feels like we're dead. Yep, there's a Fiery Temper. So that's unfortunate. Took a little bit too much damage in the early game, since we were clearly ahead on board and we had the long game covered, but I'm not sure that we could have prevented that early damage. So yeah, on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which only has 2 lands and we have lots of 3-drops, so I don't think we want to keep this one. Well, This hand is pretty awkward since we don't have any creatures in it. But I think it's still keepable since it does have all the colors we need, plus some interaction for the early game. And if we do find a creature, we can protect it. Question is, what land do we search up? I think we go for a mountain here, since then all our check lands will come into play untapped. Next turn we can potentially go with Lumbering Falls if we don't draw anything we want to play. Or we can just keep up Harness Lightning. If we draw any of our 2-drops, we can still play it thanks to Rootbound Crag. Plains Go from the opponent. So our opponent might be on some sort of white weenie aggro deck, in which case we would want to maybe Harness Lightning their first play. But I think we still play a tap land here. Alright. Glacial Fortress go. Probably want to play the wilds over one of these. And then the wilds can get either a forest or an island. Probably an island is my guess. Alright, Skyhunter Skirmisher from the opponent. So double striking flyer. Yeah, let's go for the island. We could Harness Lightning this end of turn, but I'm kind of expecting my opponent to be playing an aura deck. So they might have enchantments they want to put on the Skyhunter Skirmisher. Kind of got punished since now we drew the Tireless Tracker that I want to play, and we can't Harness Lightning a response. But I think we still play the Tracker. And if our opponent does play an enchantment, worst case scenario we just steal the Skyhunter Skirmisher with Confiscation Coup. Instead, if they're on a Flyers deck, then Harness Lightning will still be able to kill the Skyhunter Skirmisher. Reflector Mage, we could use Blossoming Defense to prevent this from being bounced. I think we do, since we want to keep the Tireless Tracker on board. Opponent could have an Essence Flux to bounce their Reflector Mage once again. Instead, doesn't look like it. So we still have our Tireless Tracker on board. We will take 2 from the Skirmisher, but we have removal for it if we want to. Alright, Hydra is a nice pickup. So I think we want to attack with the Tireless Tracker, see what our opponent does about it, and then follow up with a Hydra. If they block, I will sacrifice a clue here. And if they do have the Essence Flux, we can respond with Harness Lightning. Which does mean we didn't get through for damage, but still deals with the Reflector Mage. Alright, Skysovereign also a nice draw. So we won't have any problems dealing with our opponent's creatures. Another Reflector Mage. It's not a big deal, since we have plenty of ways to spend our mana next turn. Probably just gonna Skysovereign, since then when we do play a creature in 2 turns, we can crew it right away, take out another creature. Could also play the land, keep up a red to represent a possible burn spell. Or we could keep the land in hand to go with the Tireless Tracker. But if we draw another land, we would be able to go Bristling Hydra plus Tireless Tracker. So I think playing the land is fine here. And then I think we do Skysovereign here. And I guess our opponent could have another way to flicker their creature, but it's not gonna do all that much. And I think we go with the Reflector Mage, since that's the most annoying one if it does get flickered in the future. Alright. So far so good. Angelic Destiny on the Skyhunter Skirmisher. Alright, that's gonna deal a lot of damage, that's for sure. It's 10 damage to be exact. So also doesn't die to our Skysovereign. But now we do have the option of just dealing it with Confiscation Coup. And that also wouldn't kill the Skyhunter Skirmisher, so our opponent wouldn't get the Angelic Destiny back. And do we have any other options? Don't think we have any other great options available. And I think we do play the Lumbering Falls, so next turn we have access to a little more mana. Let's go for it. So now our opponent has to deal with the Skirmisher, but if they do, they will get the Angelic Destiny back. Alright, Angel of Invention. Makes 2 servos. Longtusk Cub is not a bad draw, so we have 6 mana available here, or rather 7 mana actually. So what we could do is play the Cub, Tracker and Harness Lightning. That way we still have a blocker for the servo. We can Harness Lightning the Angel. Plus we can apply some more pressure. So I guess we crew with the Tireless Tracker. And then we attack, killing the Angel. And I think I'm also attacking with the Skirmisher. And if our opponent somehow wants to flicker their creature, we have the response with the Harness Lightning. So that seems fine. Also we're dealing 16, so our opponent can't really take all the damage. So let's see if our opponent has another flicker effect. They do not. So they will take 16 here. And then we can follow up with Cub and still keep up our Harness Lightning, which seems pretty good. Even in the case where our opponent has something like Planar Outburst, we still have the Lumbering Falls that can also potentially crew the Skysovereign. Faith Unbroken. So if we respond with Harness Lightning, the Faith Unbroken will never be able to exile any of our creatures, so that seems worth it. And now Declaration in Stone to exile their Skyhunter Skirmisher, but because it got exiled, they don't get the Angelic Destiny back. And yeah, our opponent's attacking out of desperation, but they're dead on the way back. So yeah, a pretty interesting game, a deck I haven't really faced before. So the Angelic Destiny did come as a surprise. But yeah, removal usually beats aura decks, and Skysovereign does a pretty good job of dealing with creatures as well as stealing them. Also just works out in our favor. So I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day.